looking at how is, because we say that the company usually has an asset life cycle. We've just talked about the asset life cycle. It begins from when a company is planning to acquire the assets, and then the acquisition is undertaken. The asset comes into the possession and ownership of the company. Afterwards, this asset is going to be used in the company's operations. So the operations being that this is where the asset is going to be put to its intended use within the organization. So if it is a machine, it is taken to the factory, it is used in producing the products. If it is a photocopier or a printer, it is used to print the documents within the company. If it is chairs, they're going to be sat on. If it is laptops, they're going to be used in preparing reports for the company. So today we will be looking at now the third and fourth stage of the life cycle of the asset. And this is the operations and maintenance stage. That in this case, we say that this is usually the longest stage in the life cycle, the longest stages in the life cycle of the asset, because it now begins when the asset has been acquired and is in possession of the company, and it is going to be utilized in the day-to-day activities of the business. So upon the utilization of these assets on the day-to-day activities of the business, sometimes they are going to require a little bit of maintenance. That, for example, if you're dealing with the machinery have moving parts, and moving parts, we know that you need to lubricate them. So maybe you might need to buy some oil here and there, put them, just maintain them, put them in a condition, or now maintain them in a condition that is able to serve and fulfill its objectives within the organization. So that is what we will be addressing in this particular chapter. We will be looking at what does the operation and maintenance stage of the life cycle of an asset involve. So before we look at the operation and even the maintenance of the asset, there's something very important that we need to address. And this is now the identification of the asset and the asset register. So we look at asset identification and register. Asset identification essentially comes from the term to identify, which means that asset identification involves the identifying of the assets within the organization. For you to be able to utilize the assets of the business, you need to identify what assets does the business have. You need to be able to know where are these assets in the company, what assets are even in the company. So asset identification is that process within the organization whereby the company is able to keep track of its assets, know how many assets are there in the company at the moment, know their condition, where they are, the location of those assets, and the value of those assets. That is what we call asset identification. And asset identification is a very important process of the organization that manages a variety of fixed or movable assets, and it is an essential component of the overall asset tracking system. They're saying that this is a very important process in the organization because it helps in the management of the several types of assets in the business, those assets that are fixed, those assets that are movable, those assets that are utilized within the organization. And it is a very important component of the assets tracking system, because if you're able to identify the assets in the company, then you can also be able to track those assets in the business. So it means that asset identification is a critical process for any business, because knowing which equipment you have is essential to be able to track it. So it means that you need to be able to identify where are my assets, so that if you're able to identify first what are my assets and where are they, then you can be able to keep track of them. But if you don't identify your assets, then it means that you will not be able to track them. And if you don't track them, then you're going to experience losses of those assets. People are going to steal your assets, people are going to misappropriate those assets. So you need to have a system, a well-structured system that is going to guarantee that your assets will always be in the right place and it is going to be used for the right purpose. So because you're able to track them to see if they're currently used correctly. So asset identification will involve you, yes, tracking the assets where they are and also labeling them. How can you be able to demystify the assets of company X from the assets of company Y? I'm sure you have seen cases whereby, let's say we have these event companies. Event companies, let's say they hire tents and chairs. So you'll find that for an event company, for them to be able to identify their assets, what do? They usually label them with the name of their company. So you find ABC Events Company. So that now in the event that now they have gone and or they have rented out the chairs or they have leased out the chairs to a particular event, at the end of the event, they can be able to identify that this chair is ours because they usually do some labels so that they can be able to know that this one belongs to this company. So an organization should also do that, especially for assets, especially for the current assets, it is good for you to label them. The furniture, you label them. You can have these tags, you can have codes that you put on your assets so that you can be able to identify them. So labeling that asset or those assets in the business is very important. Machinery, you should label your machinery. The same way you should label your machinery, you should label your equipment, all types of equipment, whether they are small or whether they are big or large. They should be able to be identified from anywhere. When someone sees this, they know that this one belongs to this particular company. And a good example you can also find is that for hospitals, you find that for hospitals, everything in the hospital is labeled. So from the beds, has been labeled. If, for example, it is Aga Khan, the beddings, the sheets, the blankets, the chairs, the tables, everything has been labeled. And it is not because they are petty or something like that. It's just to be able to keep track of these things, and also to be able to reduce the risk of being these items being stolen. You find that sometimes people steal, especially beddings from hotels. That you go to a hotel and then people usually steal bedding. Sometimes people steal towels, people steal these robes. So in order to avoid that, because when someone sees, for example, that you're wearing or in your bed, if you go to you go to a hospital and then you carry beddings from the Kenyatta National Hospital and then you put it in your bed, when someone sees it, atajua tu umeiba kutoka KNH or umeiba kutoka Aga Khan. So in order to discourage people from stealing assets, or to be able to just keep track of the assets in the company, it is good to do the labeling, label them, count them, so that now at the end of the day, you can know how much assets or how many assets does the business own at a given point in time. So there are several methods that the business can use in order to identify their assets. And the most common method that we usually have is what we call the asset tags, that you you label your assets in the company using tags. So you have some documents, you print them out and then you stick these tags on them, or you print a piece of paper, you laminate it, and then you stick it on the asset. So in that case, now when someone sees this asset label, they're able to identify that this asset belongs to this particular company. So when someone sees you with that asset somewhere else, they're going to ask themselves, where did this person get this? Aliiba ama alipewa? So in order to avoid those speculations, people will just decide that they're not going to be taking or misappropriating assets of the business. So asset tags are important and they can be used to identify a range of physical assets. This could either be equipment for the company, tools, racks, machines. You just put a tag on them. These tags will now include some serial numbers that are going to serve as a unique identification number for each asset. So you can have, let's say, furniture. You can have furniture, and this furniture, let's say, just even the chairs, the ones you're talking about, the chairs for the event company. So you'll find that they sometimes they have two numbers. So you have there, they've written the name of the company, and then there's numbers. So you have 001, 002, 003, 004, 005, 101, 102, 103, 505, like that going onwards. So in this case, it means that you're able to identify the assets of the business. You give them numbers, the serial numbers, which act as a unique identification number for each asset. That if, for example, you went for an event, and for this event, you came back and you didn't come back with chair number 005, it means that this one must have been lost or broken on the way to or from the event. So it just provides a way of keeping track of the assets of the company. And these asset tags could be manufactured out of any material. It could either be plastic, it could be aluminum, it could be foil, it could be vinyl, it could be premium polyester, any material, so long as you can be able to print or write an identification number for each asset that the company has. The other type of asset identification the business can use is the barcode labels. So in this case, now you can use a barcode label whereby again you provide or you assign a unique identification number to each asset. And you'll find that this one is usually a little bit more sophisticated compared to the asset tags, because now if you wanted to have details about this particular asset, then you need to scan that barcode, so that now you can be able to get details about that particular asset or the description about that particular asset. So the same barcodes you usually find, for example, in the supermarkets. You find that for each and every item in the supermarket, there's usually a barcode which, when they swipe, they know that this asset has gone out. So therefore, we don't have this one in the company anymore, or we have one less of these ones. So the same way now supermarkets usually utilize these barcodes, then also the company can decide that if they have, again, this one is for large companies that have the finances to now invest in barcode system and also an asset tracking software, then they can be able to now utilize their barcodes, that they imprint barcodes to each and every asset that is owned by their organization. And by now pinning them or now labeling them with the barcodes, any details that you need about that particular asset, then you're just going to scan that barcode using either a handheld scanner or a mobile device. You can be able to get all details about that particular asset. It also happens for, let's say, electronic products. I'm sure you have seen for electronic products such as phones, such as laptops, when they are new, they usually have a code which you can be able now to just scan and get details about that. So in that case, it is helping the organization. It helps organizations to be able to keep track of those assets. So that is again another way that the business can use to identify the assets within their organization. The good thing about barcodes is that for the barcodes, you're saying that this one is an improved version of the asset tags. And now you have a way of gaining more information about an asset. So you'll find that each asset, let's say a laptop, is going to have its barcode. So you have, let's say, two Lenovo laptops, one in department A, another one in department B. They're going to have two different separate barcodes for them. And it is going to include all details about that particular asset. That, for example, for the laptop in department A, this laptop, does it have any warranty? So it is going to include warranty information. When was it maintained last? So it's also going to show the maintenance history. Was there maybe an upgrade to the software? What software have been incorporated into the system? So it can now be used again as a way, because now you're using a software to keep all the data about the assets. So whenever you're scanning this asset, whenever you're scanning the barcode, you can be able to gain access to those details. And then whenever any improvements are made on that asset, or whenever any decisions are made with regard to that particular asset, again, they are going to be now updated. They're going to be updated, or the asset details are going to be updated. So those are the various ways that the organization can use to identify assets. Very closely related to asset identification is the asset register. And just like the term register implies, like for example, you can have a class register, and in this class register, you're going to have details about all the students in the class, when their contact details, and whether they have attended the class or not. So in this case, you can mark present or you can mark absent. So an asset register, just like any other register, is a list of all the assets that a company owns at a given point in time, and it contains several details about the asset, the description of the asset, the condition of the asset, the ownership, who is the owner of that asset, where is that asset located. So all those details about an asset, whenever it is acquired and maintained in the business, all those details is going to be included in an asset register. So you can say that an asset register is a complete listing of businesses or an entity's physical resources, all the resources that the business owns at a given point in time. You need to be able to describe them, and you describe them and you provide a list of them in the asset register. So the asset register is going to include details of all the assets in the company. And in this case, it is going to include details such as the location of the asset, the condition of the asset, the ownership of the asset. Is it the company that owns that asset, or maybe the asset has been rented or leased? So all those details relating to the asset will be included in the asset register. So the purpose of having an asset register is to be able to enable an organization to know the status, the procurement date, the day, location, price, depreciation, and the current value of each asset. That you need to be informed about the asset. Where is it? When was it acquired? What is the current status? Does it need maintenance? In which department is it located? So far, how many times have we been able to depreciate these assets? What is the current value after depreciation for that particular asset? So just to be able to get an overview of the water, just to be able to get an overview of the assets that the business own at a given point in time, then they have the asset register. So when you acquire an asset, you include it, you add it to your asset register. When you dispose it off, you also show that you have disposed of the asset under these conditions. When you undertake maintenance of those assets, you're going to again add those details. When you depreciate the asset, you also have to add those details in the asset register. So what are the benefits? Why is it so necessary for you to have an asset register within the organization? Why not just be buying assets and don't have details regarding where they are, what is their value, what condition they are in? Is there really any benefit to it? Yes, there are some benefits associated with the use of asset registers. And these asset registers have various benefits. The utilization of this asset register is going to result in complete transparency about all the asset in the company. So it is going to result in the provision of more information about the assets in the company. So at any given point in time, we'll know how many assets are in the business, who has the assets, it is in whose hands at the moment, what is the value of those assets, how much have we depreciated, what is the condition of that asset, what is the remaining useful life of that asset. So it is just able to provide better information about the assets of the business, which now ends up improving the transparency regarding asset data. Then the other thing is that it also ensures that all assets remain compliant with regulatory standards. You find that there are some assets that you need to do regular maintenance. It is actually a requirement by law. So in that case, what do? It means that if you have an asset register, you're going to look at the various assets that are owned by the business. And given the assets that are owned by the business, what are the various requirements? What are the laws surrounding the utilization of these assets? For example, motor vehicle is supposed to do what you're supposed to have insurance for them. The same for machinery, you're supposed to have insurance for them. You're also supposed to have a license for operation of this motor vehicle on the public roads. You must have that inspection. You have to have inspection sticker for that. So this case, it means that if you have details about the assets of the company, you can also now correlate this what you can be able to correlate the requirements of the assets to the laws and regulations that have been set, so that you end up just being in compliance with the rules and regulations. Then we have the other one is that it helps in providing an accurate audit trail, that you can be able to track an asset from the beginning, from the first time it came into the business until the current condition and position where it is. So it just helps you to make it easier to do a count of these assets, to track the assets, and that one now ends up just providing a more accurate audit trail, so that if someone wanted to just get more details regarding the assets of the business, then it is actually very easy to do so, because you have all the details in the asset register. The other one is that it helps to track and identify assets of the business, because at the end of the day, you have all the details about the asset, when they were bought, where they are, the location, who has them, what condition are they in. So in that case, it helps to better improve the tracking process and the identification of the asset. It also helps in preventing the assets from being stolen or lost, because you have accurate location data. So someone is just not going to steal the assets of the business. Ulimpea alafu anasema hukumpea, anaiba, anaenda nayo nyumbani, anasema mi hata sikuwa na hiyo asset, mliachia nani? So to avoid that, have an asset register. When it moves from one department to another, from one person to another, you have that trail of transactions and how the asset has been transferred from one point to another, which is going to help preventing loss of the assets, or even these assets being stolen from the organization. Then we have the other one is that it allows you to calculate depreciation. We say that depreciation computation is very important because of the preparation of the statement of financial position. So if you have now the statement of financial position, you need details about the non-current assets. And in this case, you usually need the net book value, or nowadays we call it the carrying amount. So without now details about the asset, the condition of the asset, and the value, the initial cost of the asset, then you'll not be able to get this net book value, which you're going to include in the statement of financial position for that particular asset. So to just have accurate data in the business, then you need that asset register, because now you can get details about the cost, the depreciation, therefore the net book value of the asset. Then lastly, it is going to help you in estimating the maintenance and repair cost, because you're able to identify the condition of the assets, and based on the conditions of the assets, you can be able to establish what is required with regard to the use of those assets in the business. So the next thing that we need to look at is the what exactly is to be included in the asset register. We say that yes, you're supposed to prepare the asset register, and there are so many details that are included in the asset register. But what exactly should be included in the asset register? So yes, we have different types of asset register, but you will find that you have to provide some details regarding the asset register, whether it is a digital asset register, whether it is an IT register or just a normal physical asset register. These details need to be included. So what are the details that are included? So the first thing that you need to include, of course, is the description of the asset. So what exactly is the asset? So in this case, for example, you can say that it is a computer, or it is a piece of machinery, or it is a printer. So in this case, you show just the exact details relating to that particular asset. The next thing you show is the exact location of the asset, that this computer is currently in the finance department, or it is currently in the procurement department. So the exact location of the asset is also important or critical. The other thing is procurement details about that asset. So when was it purchased and at what price? So in this case, you say that it was purchased on the 9th of November 2022 at a cost of 20,000 Kenya shillings. Then the estimated life expectancy, that this one was estimated, it's going to be there for 2 years or for 20 years or for 30 years. How many years is this asset expected to serve meaningfully in the company? Then the next thing is you're also supposed to provide details about the depreciation value. We've talked about this. We say that depreciation is the rate at which the asset is losing value over time due to wear and tear. So in this case, now we have the asset, how much have you depreciated and what depreciation method have you used? Have you used, for example, the straight line method, or have you used the reducing balance method? So you show for this particular year, this is how much it has depreciated by. So let's say it has depreciated by 10,000 shillings, straight line method. So you provide again those details that someone can see if this is the cost at which the asset was bought. So we bought the asset at 100,000 shillings. You have depreciated it so far by 40,000 shillings, or it has lost value by 40,000 shillings. Then it means that now the remaining net book value of the asset is equals to 60,000 shillings. So provide those details so that someone can be able to just get an overview of the asset and its performance. Then also you can include details about insurance and compliance details. Does this asset require to be insured? And have you also complied to all other rules and regulations surrounding the utilization of this asset in the company's operations? Then we have, you also need to include details about the maintenance history of that asset, including any repairs that have been done and any downtime that has been experienced with the use of that asset in the past. So those are just some of the details that you're going to include when you are preparing an asset register. And we have several types of asset registers that we need to be well aware of. The first type of asset register we have is what we call a fixed asset register. We have an IT asset register, and then we have digital asset registers. Fixed asset registers refers to the non-current assets of the business, things such as motor vehicles, the furniture, the buildings, the machinery. Those ones we categorize them under the fixed assets. IT assets registers relate to anything information technology, the laptops that are owned by the business, both. So we have both the hardware and the software bit. So in this case, for example, are there any softwares you've acquired and things like that? The digital assets refers to any assets that are not tangible in nature. For example, you could have a copyright, you could have a patent, you could have a copyright or a patent that the business owns, or you have some right to the assets. In that case, you can be able to classify them as the digital assets. Then intangible assets of the company that are digital in nature. So these assets, saying that these are the different types of asset registers that you're going to have. So different asset registers are going to have slightly different types of information that have been included in them. So you shall start off with the data that you're likely to find in a fixed asset register. We say that fixed asset register, this one includes details relating to fixed assets, non-current assets, land, property, equipment, machinery, motor vehicles, furniture, those kinds of things in the business. So you'll find that the details are almost similar to what we were saying here and what should be included in the asset register. So provide a description of the asset, the purchase date, the purchase price, location of those assets, who is the owner, is the company the owner, or is it that you have leased that asset? Who is the user of the assets, which department, and who exactly in that department does it have? What is the barcode and serial number of those assets? You say that you need to identify the assets. And in this case, you identify them through the barcodes and serial numbers. So in this case, you say that this is a machine, and this machine has a barcode serial number 001. So when you're looking for this machine, you always track details using the barcode number, and in this case you can be able to get all the details about that particular piece of asset. Then also show details about any insurance coverage relating to that asset, the current value of the asset, the depreciation method that you have used to depreciate that asset and get the current value of the asset, the warranty information if this asset has any warranty, especially for machinery, and electronics. These ones likely are most likely to come with warranty information. So that should the asset now do what? Should the asset now stop working within the warranty period, then you can just take it for repair to the manufacturer or for replacement again from the manufacturer. Then show details about the maintenance information, the remaining life of that asset, and then the last one is the resale value or the salvage value of the asset. So if you're able to provide that information to the what? If you're able to provide that information in your asset register, then it will now allow you to have an asset register that is functional, it is effective, and someone can easily be able to get any information that they have. The next thing that you also we see that we have various types of asset registers. So we looked at the fixed assets register. So we look at the IT asset register. So IT asset register is going to have details relating to anything information technology related. So anything related to computers, the hardware, the software, all these ones are going to be included, or all details are going to be included in the IT asset register. So what is included in the IT asset register? We have several items. For example, the type of assets that you have. Is it, for example, a computer? Is it a laptop? Is it a desktop? What are the softwares that are included? If the asset is a software asset, what is again the description of that particular asset? Then you show the location of the asset. Where is it currently positioned? Is it within the premises? Is it a private asset or is it public? And also, is it maybe hosted, for example, on the cloud? Nowadays, we find that businesses, instead of hosting these details of theirs manually and physically as we used to before. Some host them through the cloud or on the cloud, especially those entities that undertake cloud computing and cloud procurement. Then we have now the next one is the operating system that is driving the computers, or that is being used currently in the computers. Do you have any licenses, and when is the license renewal date? When are you expected to renew the license? When did the license start? Who is currently using that asset? Do you have any cyber insurance coverage against cyber attacks? And then also, does it depreciate? And if it does, which depreciation method are you currently using? So those again are some of the details that you would find in the IT asset register. Then we have the last type of asset register, which is the digital asset register. And the digital asset register is going to have details about the digital assets in the company. And a digital asset, we can say that basically this is anything that the company owns that exists in a digital format, and it comes with the right to use that. Only you as an entity has the right to utilize those assets. So in that case, we classify that as a digital asset. Maybe you have a copyright, you have music, maybe you're a music production company. So in this case, this music that you have produced, then you have put it there in the online realm, and you don't want anyone to reproduce your work. In this case, you can be able to copyright it. So in that case, it will be categorized as a digital asset. So in this case, when you have digital assets in the company in whichever form, you see that so long as it is anything that is in the form of a digital format and comes with the right to use, those ones we categorize them as digital assets. So in this case, you're supposed to provide a description of the asset, location of the asset, where are they currently located within the organization. You're also supposed to show who owns the asset, and is the asset copyrighted? So is it asset owned or is it copyrighted? And then who is the asset user? Is this asset going to be depreciating in some way? What is the depreciation method used? Have you taken a digital insurance cover? And what is the format of that particular asset? So in that case, now you can be able to, if anyone now wants details about the assets of the business, so just go look into the asset register, and they're able to get all the information that they need. So we can stop there for today. You can see that it's almost 9:16, and I'm sure you have had a very long day. I don't want to make it your night even much longer. So I want us to stop there for today. And then again, this one, I want you to, I'm going to send these notes. I think I'm going to forward them on the portal, so you can be able to access them from the portal and maybe just read through these details. Just read through these details, and then we will meet in the next class, and we can also discuss them. Someone had something to say.
I was saying I think it's already in the portal.
Okay, so I already uploaded.
Yeah.
Okay. So kindly just look through them. So that when we meet again in the next class, we have a discussion on them, then look at something else. So any questions on what we have looked at? Any questions on what we have looked at today? I would also like to maybe set up a cut just to see if we are together. You know, sometimes when you do classes online, inakuwa ngumu watu kufollow through. So I just want us to do some questions, especially on management accounting, on what you have done in the past, some things that you could expect, for example, to be tested in the exam. So I'm going to issue some past paper questions on the topic we have already covered that you can attempt, just attempt them. then we will discuss them once you're done with all the notes. So you will find them uploaded from, I think from tomorrow evening. You can access those questions. You can do them between tomorrow and Monday, any time between tomorrow and Monday. So you can take 1 hour. 1 hour. I'm going to set it for 1 hour, 1.5 hours. So when you find free time, you have 1.5 hours to spare. Just look at those questions. Once you have opened the, once you've opened the what? Once you've opened the questions, it is going to take 1.5 hours, and then it will now close. So you take those 1.5 hours, you do the questions, you upload your answers, and then you submit it. Then I'll be able to see them and mark them. So that now again, I can see if we are at par, especially for the not theoretical, but the mathematical bit. So that I can see again if we are to do revision, where to focus on. So I'll set the questions tomorrow. Then I will inform you in the group that I've set the questions. Then you can try between tomorrow and Monday, anytime. So long as you find free time, just log into the portal. And once you're logged in, download the questions, attempt the questions, upload them, upload your answers. Then we shall now look at them another time. So with that, I'd like to wish you all a nice, a good night. And again, apologies for the mishaps. Sometimes technology, we usually like using technology